Greetings, fellow nationalists. This is Booin' a Boss Radio, coming to you live from Kilkenny, Ireland. And I'm Michael Quinn, and I'll be your host for this evening's show. I have to say it's absolutely fantastic to be back with you again and broadcasting live. We were with DARPA TV, and unfortunately, due to a lack of subscribers, they had to shut down the service. For any future endeavours on their part, I wish them the best of luck and great success. And I have to say that they were fantastic people, very supportive of the right to freedom of speech, and suffered quite a lot of abuse from our enemies that were ringing them and emailing them and doing everything they possibly could to attempt to shut down our broadcasts. However, we're back live on the air again, and as I said, I'm absolutely thrilled about that. Now, I've three topics I want to touch on this evening. And this is an article I was sent, and it's dealing with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's for Article 14 on asylum, and a lot of people seem to be confused about this, and they believe that once a person claims asylum, that the state is obliged to accept that asylum request and basically, allow them to stay here. I have another one regarding Triad gangs. These are low-life scumbag Chinese individuals, and they're using Chinese women as prostitutes here in Ireland, and these women come in on student visas. So there you go. These gangsters are abusing that system. And I'm going to read you an article on Ireland's sham marriage scam, and these are Pakistanis and Indians that have been given the right to stay in Ireland, and yet they're abusing that system, and they're marrying particularly East European women, and so that's so they can stay in the country and so on. So there's more abuse that's going on, and the only people you have to blame are the politicians and all these pro-immigrant organisations, pro-mass immigration organisations, and of course many Irish citizens who support mass immigration into our country. And this each and every single one of them are actually responsible for the abuse that's going on in Ireland. Okay, we're going to kick off with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The source for this is the ICP, so I'm going to read it as I got it. It's titled The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 14, Asylum. Although the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a non-binding document, it is regarded as the foundation document for human rights and as the human rights standard that countries should set for themselves. It deals with asylum in Article 14, and over the years a basic misunderstanding has arisen as to what it says about the right of asylum. Given the development of the asylum crisis, it is imperative that that misunderstanding be replaced by a genuine understanding of what the Declaration actually says. The following, as can be clearly seen, is not an interpretation by the ICP, but an incontrovertible statement of fact based upon the drafting history of the document. As the years have passed, it has become customary for the media and the general public, and indeed all but the most careful of lawyers, to speak of a, quote, right to asylum, unquote, as if this meant the right to be granted asylum. In actual fact, the, quote, right, unquote, has classically been the right of the state to grant asylum, not the right of the asylum seeker to be granted it. In other words, the right of the state effectively to say to the state of origin, quote, no, you may not have X back, we have given him asylum, unquote. That was the basis on which Article 14 of the Declaration began to be drafted, and it remains the position of the eventual final wording of that article. The 6 drafts and final version from the appendices of Mary Ann Glendon's very readable book, A World Made New, Eleanor Roosevelt and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The first draft, quote, the Humphrey draft, unquote, was produced by John Humphrey, director of the UN Human Rights Division. Here the asylum article states, quote, every state has the right to grant asylum to political refugees, unquote. The second draft, quote, the Casson draft, unquote, was produced by René Casson of the UN Commission on Human Rights, which had the job of producing the declaration. Casson had a particular interest in and commitment to the question of asylum, being a French Jew. And we all know that the Jews are basically hell-bent on destroying white Christian Europe, as well as the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. Okay, who had lost 29 of his relatives, including his sister, in concentration camps. These people never shut up whining about the Holocaust, because basically that's what it is. The whole thing is a hoax. There's absolutely no proof in the concentration camps and in Auschwitz that there was any gas chambers there at all. Okay, sorry, I digress. Anyway, nevertheless, in his draft, the wording remains exactly the same. The third draft from the drafting committee of the Human Rights Commission reads, quote, everyone has the right to escape persecution on grounds of political or other beliefs, or on grounds of racial prejudice, by taking refuge on the territory of any state willing to grant him asylum, unquote. Note the final part of the article, which keeps us in the realm of the discretion of the state and not in the situation of a right to be granted asylum. The fourth draft, produced by the full commission, says, quote, everyone shall have the right to seek and be granted asylum from persecution. This right will not be accorded to criminals, nor to those whose acts are contrary to the principles of the United Nations, unquote. At this point, we seem to be moving to the idea of a right to asylum. We are, however, not yet to the final drafting stage. The fifth draft of the Commission maintains this position. It reads, 1. Quote, everyone has the right to seek and be granted in other countries asylum from persecution. Number 2, prosecutions genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations do not constitute persecution. The sixth draft from the UN Third Committee on Social, Humanitarian and Cultural Affairs was framed in circumstances which focus minds on the implications of the asylum right article and which forced a return to the more classical interpretation of that right. It was the autumn of 1948 Some of Israel's neighbours have become concerned about the burden on their societies posed by the continuing influx of Palestinian refugees. In the ensuing discussion, the right to be, quote, granted, unquote, asylum from persecution was diluted to become the right to, quote, enjoy, unquote, asylum. This brought us back to the classical right of the state to grant asylum. The individual's right to enjoy asylum is no more than the state's right to say to the country of origin, quote, we have given him asylum, you will not be allowed to have him back, he will continue to enjoy or maintain that situation, unquote. Delegates from many countries were persuaded to vote for this change after Mrs. Corbett, the United Kingdom delegate, pointed out that a right to be, quote, granted, unquote, asylum would conflict with the immigration laws of nearly every country. The article then read, 1. Everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. 2. This right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purpose and principles of the United Nations. This remained the wording in the Universal Declaration as passed by the General Assembly on December 10th, 1948. Okay, well, we all know the asylum system is just an absolute joke here in Ireland. And recently there was a 5-year period where these bogus spongers cost the Irish taxpayer a staggering 1.2 billion plus. And here we are in the doldrums, in a massive recession, and yet we are spending taxpayers' money on a bunch of couriers, because basically that's what we're getting in. We're getting the worst of the worst out of all these West African and Asian countries coming here to abuse our system, abuse our women, and abuse any rights they've been given here by the Irish government. Personally, we believe that the asylum system should be just abolished, and every single individual here seeking asylum be immediately deported, and that would solve the problem overnight. And we'll guide them into the nearest airport or onto the nearest boat and get rid of a lot of them. Okay, I'll go on now to the Triad gangs trafficking Chinese women into Ireland for sex trade. There's a mention of this a little bit explicit. Might offend people, but I'm just going to say it. Okay, about offering hand jobs. Okay. Now, I'm not going to repeat it. It's repeated in the article a number of times, but I'm not going to repeat it. I'm just going to say hand J, okay, so people will know what I'm talking about. We may have young viewers looking in, and it's inappropriate language, for them to be listening to. Okay, anyway, young Chinese women working in a, quote, massage, unquote, parlours, which are advertised in the Irish Times, was last week offering hand J for €60. The establishments, styling themselves massage centres, have sprung up across Dublin and its suburbs this year. Gardaí said they appear to be centrally organised, as all offer precisely the same services and quote the same prices. all advertised with mobile phone numbers in the massage and physical therapy section of the small ads pages at the back of the Irish Times. Of the 8 operations advertising in a recent edition of the Irish Times, 7 offered a half hour at exactly the same rate of €60. When contacted by phone, one young woman who answered our call volunteered that Hand J was on offer for €60. 3 others, when asked if more than massage was on offer, replied, quote, Hand J, unquote. 3 others, when asked if, quote, extra services, unquote, were on offer, replied that the caller should, quote, ask the girl, unquote, after attending the parlour. They all volunteered the locations, which included a residential street in Dunleary, a suite above a row of shops in South County Dublin, and various apartments in Phibsborough, Crumlin and the Portobello Camden Street area. One operating from a basement apartment in Dunleary quoted the same €60 rate for half an hour to include massage and HJ on last Friday afternoon. A Chinese woman in her 40s was answering a mobile phone, and at least one young woman in her late teens or early 20s was providing the, quote, services, unquote. The older woman, when asked if more services were on offer for more money than the €60 quoted, replied, quote, talk to the girl, unquote. She also said the girl would, quote, make you very happy, unquote. The upstairs of the terraced house is currently being renovated into offices. During a half hour on Friday afternoon last, 2 men, one middle-aged and driving a Dublin registered Toyota, and the other, a younger man of Eastern European appearance, left the parlour, and another middle-aged man arrived. The Dunleary parlour, like most of the others, has only a mobile phone contact number and quotes opening hours of 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. The upstairs of the Victorian house was being renovated into offices, and no one working there knew how long the massage parlour had been open. One of the office staff said, quote, a lot of guys go in and out, right enough, unquote. Above a shop in Stillorgan, the young woman who answered the door of the parlour offered the identical massage and Hand J for €60 in perfect and quietly spoken English. 2 of the advertised premises in the Camden Street area are within yards of each other. When asked over the phone what services other than massage were on offer, they replied, quote, €60 for half hour, unquote. Asked if any other services were on offer, the woman replied, quote, you ask girl, she look after you well, unquote. A woman who answered the phone to the neighbouring parlour again quoted €60 for half an hour, and when asked what other services were available, replied, quote, ask the girl when you arrive, unquote. The young woman in Phibsborough quoted the same price and added, quote, talk to the girl when you come in, unquote. The girl who answered the phone in Crumlin offered, quote, fantastic massage, unquote, and, quote, Hand J, unquote. Yet another advertising as operating in the city centre directed the caller to an apartment on the Quays and said, quote, we do full body massage, only Hand J, no more than that, unquote. When contacted by the Sunday Independent, the Gardaí said that they did not know the exact number of these Chinese parlours that have opened in Ireland in the past year, but one Garda said that, quote, dozens, unquote, have sprung up in Dublin alone. The Garda sources said they had no idea how the girls came to be in Ireland, but thought that most were probably here on student visas, the most common form of entry into the country for Chinese workers. The main concern of the Gardaí is that young Chinese women have been trafficked into Ireland. How they came here and what happens to them here is usually a mystery. Some women are known to suffer wretched lives and are often abused by their traffickers and even murdered. Last year, at the trial in Belfast of a Chinese Triad human trafficker known as, quote, Snakehead, unquote, it emerged that a 22-year-old Chinese prostitute called Q Mei Na was strangled after she asked to be freed. It was learned that she had been abandoned as a baby as part of the harsh, quote, one-child, unquote, culture in parts of China, through which female children are shunned, sold, or simply killed by their family. And what they fail to mention here, folks, is that there are millions of them are actually being aborted. Okay. She was abandoned on a train and then given a home by an elderly couple who brought her up as their daughter. She was forced into sex slavery after paying Triad human traffickers to get her into Europe. Her traffickers got her into Dublin on a student visa through one of the fake foreign student colleges. Then in 2002, they brought her to Belfast and forced her to work as a prostitute. She was charged around €30,000 by the traffickers to get into Europe and was initially told that she could work the fee off in well-paid employment. However, her body was found in the boot of a car in Belfast in June 2004. Triad member, no doubt I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, but anyway, Chang Hai Shang, described by members of the Chinese community in Belfast as her, quote, slave master, unquote, was tracked down to China by the PSNI and sentenced to life imprisonment last year. Human trafficking is now rivaling the drugs trade as the biggest form of organised criminal activity throughout the globe. The Chinese gangs lead the world with thousands of young people being trafficked internationally. In the US, the FBI estimate that a healthy young woman enslaved and working as a prostitute can produce over 1 million in profit for her masters over a 4 to 5 year period. After that, they may be deemed to have paid off their debt and may be released. Last year, the Irish government introduced the Criminal Law Human Trafficking Act and signed the European Convention on Action Against Human Trafficking. A child trafficking and pornography law was enacted in 2002, and it's obviously they're not really following up on that at all. I think the Gardaí can be extremely lax in relation to trafficking of young girls and young children and so on, because it's so rampant around Ireland. It's obvious they're not actually doing what they should be doing. Anyway, however, the Irish Refugee Council is critical of the government for not providing places of safety and refuge for women trafficked here for sex. If Gardaí were to raid any of the premises openly working as brothels, the girls would be prosecuted and deported, or if their visa papers are in order, they could be simply released and they would then again be in the hands of their slave masters. Well, don't prosecute them, but do deport them. That's going to take them out of the hands of the triads if they're deported back to China, rather than keeping them here and as a burden and expense to the Irish taxpayer. So don't prosecute them, deport them back to China or wherever they came from. Let me see, where am I after? Okay, yeah. The IRC says that there is no coordinated multi-agency response to assist victims of trafficking in Ireland, and there are only ad hoc arrangements from the National Immigration Bureau, the Gardaí and some charities. The IRC regularly reports that women and children who are trafficked here disappear, and there is no way of knowing if they are dead or alive. Now my heart goes out to these women that are being used, abused and murdered by these criminal gangs. But as I said, if they're caught here, deport them back to whatever country they came from, and thus that process will free them from the Triad traffickers and these East European traffickers that are involved in all that. Also, okay, we're going to take a break now, and after the break I will read the article on Ireland's sham marriage scam. Okay, back after this.
There's gotta be a better way. Red tanks, mass graves, but liars always get their say. Only good commie is a dead commie. It's about the time we learn that the only time our peoples are gonna taste freedom when the last red flag is burned. Red flags are burning, white flags are burned. Red flags are burning all across the world. Selling papers, telling lies, supplying Mother Russia with ready-made spies. Total evil, unwashed, they try to tell our people that we already lost. Defeat is say that we can't cope, the real make justice at the end of the road. Red traitors, Marxist scum, that feel country be overrun. Red flags are burning, white flags are furled. Red flags are burning all across the world. In the media, left wing, promoting all this poison about everything. ITV and BBC and Channel 4, everyone would think we're in the USSR. We're always wrong and they're always right. If someone attacks us, we must never fight. Well, listen, commie, and listen well. You're gonna end up in your own hell. Red flags are burning, white flags are burned. Red flags are burning all across the world.